Hello, everyone. It's Jen Quintana here. I just wanted to give a quick overview of some conversations that I had this weekend with my husband. He had a very powerful awakening experience that kind of culminated last Friday. So it's been a fun weekend hanging out with him with his kind of new awakened state. Um, for those of you who have been following me for a little while, you know that my husband is very scientifically inclined. Never has he been open to anything really very woo-woo. It's just been the last couple of years that he's been open to really being open-minded that things might be different than he thinks. And there's been a series of events that have caused a little bit more of an opening for him until now he's had like a full awakening. Which is so funny. On Friday, he was like, he couldn't even drive the car. He was just like so mind blown. But anyways, when he was in that state, sometimes when people are in this awakened state, it happens sometimes after like a deep, intensive meditation retreat or first awakening experience. People say some really profound stuff. And so I wanted to share with you some of his insights that he had immediately when he was in that first newly awakened state. So one of the things that he was talking about was aliens. And so he and I have always kind of disagreed on this topic. I just really don't buy into nothing I've read in spiritual text or wisdom leads me to believe that alien beings in a physical, dense physical matter form exist. I do believe that there are spiritual beings on every planet and throughout universes. I don't believe that they're necessarily going to be dense matter like we find ourselves here on Earth. I think Earth is a little bit special like that. My husband, however, being scientific, believes that it's possible. And to the extent that I'm open-minded, I have to say, okay, it's possible. But I just don't think it's probable. So I think a lot of the things that you see on television about aliens, I totally believe that there are aliens. I just don't always believe that beings that are seen that are kind of in a dense matter body driving around actual vehicles are from another planet. I think they're somehow here, and part of life on this planet actually. But yes, I don't discount anybody's experience. I think those are real experiences. I just don't think that there are beings who are visiting us from another galaxy or universe. Anyways, so my husband was in this profoundly awakened state, and he says to me, he says, you know, they're starting to plan ahead for space travel. They're starting to wonder what the impact of being in space and being born in space will have on human evolution. And as he's talking about this, he said, they're realizing that people will probably have larger heads because they're going to be more in their intellect. There's going to be less gravity in space. They're going to be a little bit more frail. They said that women actually would break bones giving birth, so there'd be more of an inclination towards cesarean section because of the bone density issue when you live in a lower gravity place. So this is all very interesting to me, how our bodies might evolve if we were to be living and giving birth in outer space. And then he kind of had this aha where he was like, exactly how we describe, or people who have had encounters with aliens describe aliens looking, is exactly how we will look in the future when we are habitating in outer space. And he's like, and so he said, I believe that all these encounters with aliens that people are having, where they feel like they're being scientifically, dissected or tagged or whatever, are really people who have now figured out time travel and are coming back and studying us in our history. And because we haven't yet evolved to the point of understanding or of putting people into space, living in space, they can't jeopardize their own existence by letting us know about them. So that time hasn't come for us yet in this here and now. So that was a really interesting and profound perspective. And so he went on to hypothesize that aliens probably were captured at some point. The whole Area 51 situation is probably true. Um, but when they did DNA tests on those aliens, they found them to be human, and not pre-human, like not that they seeded us, that we are genetically related to them and that they're our predecessors, but that they are more advanced than us. And it could be that scientists were for a long time still trying to figure out if they're more advanced than us, but that we broke off from them in the past, like thinking that they seeded the Earth, like life on Earth came from a human-like alien form somewhere else. But my husband said no. He said actually they're us, more evolved into the future. As we evolve into space, we're going to figure out how to bend time and gravity and travel back. And so they are us traveling back, studying us in history, because that's what we do. We study things. So like we tag whales, our future selves are going to come back and tag us and study us. And so as soon as they figure out genetically, when they're able to figure out the DNA, that we're not a break off of an earlier branch of them, but that they are actually us evolved further into the future, coming back to visit us, I think that the secret's going to be out, and we will welcome our future evolved selves back here. But the time just hasn't come for us to know that yet, but it's coming. Anyway, so that was really an explanation that resonated with me. I thought that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that these beings that are dense matter but look a little bit different than us, but are humanoid, are actually us in the future, evolved. And of course, our human nature is to study scientifically things, and they've come back to study us now with a new perspective that they have in the future. So that was really interesting to me. That makes sense to me, and I could totally buy into that. So aliens, so space creatures with the big eyes, they're us in the future. We're going to probably evolve differently. Those who go off into space will evolve separately from those who stay on Earth. It's an interesting kind of concept. But they're not a race from another galaxy that's here, that either brought life here or that's here for any other reason. They're genetically the same as us. That could be our children's grandchildren's grandchildren. So it's a new perspective for me. I like it. It really fits with everything else I know about spiritual beings and the cosmos. Steiner wrote a lot about every planet having its own spiritual life. That there are beings on the moon who used to be on the Earth that kind of walked one in one with some of the tribal peoples, and they've now kind of moved into the realm of the moon. When I first read that, I was kind of like, wow, could that be true? And then I wondered if people who walked on the moon had ever had an encounter with a spiritual being. And it turns out that one astronaut did, and he came back to Earth and he became like a super religious fanatic because he had this whole experience of a spiritual being while he was on the moon. So I think that's true. And Steiner talked about the beings that live on every planet: Mercury, Saturn, Mars, all the planets. And then other spiritual teachers that I've read talk about beings that live in other galaxies, and that our creation source, whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever it is, created other sources that also create in other universes and galaxies. And they sometimes watch us and see what we're doing. Steiner also said that when we die, we move out into the realm of the other planets over a period of time, and we gain some knowledge from each of those spiritual realms before we incarnate back into the Earth, into a body here on the Earth. So our bodies stay here and die here, but our souls can go out and mix with other spiritual forces, and then come back in and reincarnate into a body that's been evolving over time on this planet. But the alien creatures that are like humanoid, hard bodies, fly around in spaceships, because they can't obviously just be spiritual beings out in the universe, because they actually have lungs and a body, and they need to be in contained space vehicles to go into space. Those are us, evolved into the future. It's a new theory. I'm going with it. Anyways, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was super interesting and powerful perspective to have, kind of an intermixing of science and alien UFOlogy, where we're actually creating that by being human and by evolving into the future and pursuing space travel. We're actually creating that race of beings that are us more evolved into the future, who are likely coming back now to study us in the past. So why don't you just sit with that and see how that resonates with you? I love comments. And if my husband says anything else that's very insightful, I'll be back to share it here. Thanks so much for checking in and spending some time listening to this podcast today.